Hello everyone. Let's talk about the Coase Theorem. And well, it's still about externalities, right? We're still talking about externalities. And we talked about negative externalities, right? And we talked about positive externalities. And we talked about possible solutions, right? So when we talked about negative externalities, one of the solutions were taxes. When we talked about positive externalities, we talked about vouchers and subsidies. We talked about other solutions, right, and tools, but that were the ones we focused on. So today we're going to look at this very interesting thing called Coase Theorem, which pretty much says that things could be worked out between people without even like government getting involved. And the idea is that if people can communicate and negotiate at no cost that would prohibit such negotiation, then they can work out the purchase and sale of the right to perform activities that cause externalities. And in this case, they can always arrive to an efficient solution to the problems caused by externalities. If you recall, those problems were the problem of inefficiency. So today we're going to see how people will work out this inefficiency situation that is caused by either positive or negative externality and arrive to an efficient outcome. Well, in fact, to be exact here, we're going to talk about negative externality, but this theory applies just as well to a situation where there is a positive externality. All right, so we're just gonna go through some numerical examples. And it's a very simple model. There are not even curves, just tables with numbers, only for numbers. So we have two people, Abercrombie, and we have Fitch, and we have two possible technological approaches to whatever activity is going on. So if you take a look at the text, and I strongly recommend you to read through this stuff after you listen to this. So what was the story? So Abercrombie has a factory, and that actually generates some waste and toxic waste. And it has two choices, to use a filter or go without filter. And if you look at the numbers, you can see that using a filter actually adds hold on a second. Using a filter, right, that gives him less benefit. So running his business without a filter is more profitable. All right, but we also have another guy named Fitch, who is a fisherman, and he is located downstream from Abercrombie's factory. And for him, of course, Abercrombie using filter is better, because if you look at the numbers for Fitch, when filter is being used by Abercrombie, he earns 100 a day, and if Abercrombie doesn't use the filter, Fitch only gains 50 per day. Now let's look which outcome is more efficient. Is it using filter or not using a filter? To figure out efficiency, in this case, all we need to do is to add those numbers for both people. So when filter is being used, they both gain 100, so total adds up to 200. If no filter is being used, then they end up getting 180 between two of them. So clearly, this is an efficient outcome. Now let's ask ourselves, what would Abercrombie do if he basically can do whatever is best for him? And the answer, of course, Abercrombie will go without filter. Inefficient, right? It's an inefficient situation. and that's the starting point. And that would be the case if the law is on Abercrombie's side. So it means he can do whatever he wants. Now, how can we expect this inefficiency to be resolved if these two people can communicate and negotiate? Well, let's see what would happen if actually Abercrombie went back to, back or just was encouraged to use a filter. So if he goes from not using a filter to using a filter, he loses how much? He loses 130 minus 100, so he loses $30. At the same time, Fitch is gaining 50, right? So plus 50. And in fact, between two of them, we know that the overall gain will be 20, which makes sense because one guy is gaining 50, another one is losing 30. So between two of them, the overall gain is 20. Now, what we can actually kind of figure out from this number is that this number, this gain, I mean, if distributed properly, could encourage the guy who is actually making the choice in this case, who is Abercrombie, right, to do the right thing, which is basically using the filter because it provides a more efficient outcome. And how could it be arranged without like anyone else involved? Well, through communication and negotiation. So Fitch knows that he has 50 to gain, right? And imagine he knows that Abercrombie is going to lose 30. So what can Fitch do? He can pretty much suggest to Abercrombie to share the gain he, Fitch, would get if Abercrombie goes from not using filter to using a filter. So what he can suggest giving Abercrombie $40 if he actually does this. And if this is the case, Abercrombie will be gaining not 100, but 140 per day, right? And is it enough for him to take this route? Well, clearly yes, because it's better, 140 is better than 130. So this outcome, when he's earning 100, but also getting this, you might call it subsidy, from Fitch, beats just going without a filter. What about Fitch himself? Well, he only gives 40 away, right? Which means he still keeps 10 out of his gain. So now his outcome changes from 100 to 60 because he gave 40 away. He's giving 40 away to Abercrombie. So we can show it like this. So $40 going away from Fitch to Abercrombie. So how much do they get together? Well, it's 140 plus 60 right after the payment, which not surprisingly brings us back to 200. So between two of them, they still get 200, which is efficient and better than 180. The distribution changed, of course, because if Abercrombie was doing, if he actually was using filter, then it would be 100 versus 100. But now Fitch had to give away some of his benefit. But it's still better for Finch again because 60, even though it's not 100, which would be really nice to him, but it's still better than 50. So this outcome still better than this one. And this is why both people are happy in this kind of arrangement, and also efficiency is restored. So this is one example how efficiency can be restored through communication and negotiation. So basically, whoever has more to gain from going from going from inefficient situation to efficient, just shares this gain from the one who is actually choosing efficient or inefficient approach to running his or her business. And this is how things pretty much settle in this case. Now, let's go on. And by the way, this is pretty much the explanation that I went over. If you want to read it like at your own pace, here you go. This is your choice. This is your chance to go through the numbers on your own, just reading this explanation in this on these pages. All right, let's see. And I think we just went over the first part. So what's going on here? Suppose the cost and benefit of using the filter are as in the previous example. Well, and okay, so basically that was the story of Abercrombie doing what made sense to him without Fitch being able to, encourage him to do something that would restore efficiency. And this part 2 is what I guess we just went over, showing how sharing $40 with Abercrombie helps Fitch to be better of himself. Now, another table are different numbers. And here we're changing two things. We're changing numbers, and we're also changing the way things are arranged, because in the previous case, Abercrombie could do whatever he wanted. But in this case, the law says that Abercrombie may not dump toxins in the river unless he has Fitch's permission. So Fitch has the upper hand in terms of property rights, or in terms of on whose side the law is. Now let's look at these numbers. So numbers change. Make sure you understand that. So we're not applying this new legal arrangement to the same numbers. We're actually changing numbers. So let's look at these numbers. What do we see? We see that, well, actually using filters gives us the same outcome. In terms of efficiency, it's $200 between two of them. But now numbers for the situation when filter is not being used change. And in fact, it turns out that in this case, using filter is actually, well, using filter is actually less efficient. So given these numbers, which is 150 and 70, gives us 220, right? So in this case, not using a filter makes more sense. So that's different. That's the difference between these numbers and previous numbers. And also we flip the law. So actually now Fitch has the upper hand. And what we're going to see here is that if Fitch pretty much acting on his own without Abercrombie to doing something to, change things, then Fitch would obviously go to this solution. So if he chooses what technology is being used in the area, then of course he will go to filter. He will insist on, companies using filters in his areas because he will be earning 100. And if companies do not use filters, then he will only get 70. But given the numbers, it's not efficient. But again, for Fitch, if he is just acting on his own, looking at his own payoffs, right? It doesn't matter. I mean, he doesn't really see these numbers, right? And because of it, he actually choosing an efficient outcome. How this inefficiency could be resolved in a similar way that we just discussed earlier, through negotiation, or through communication and negotiation. Similar idea. Now Abercrombie has to figure out how to encourage Fitch to let him do what is efficient. And what he can do is, again, just in the previous case, as Fitch used money to encourage Abercrombie to do the right thing, now Abercrombie can use money to encourage Fitch to pick the more efficient technology. So to see how it can happen, again, let's see how things will change if they go from this inefficient situation. Oh, hold on. Let me make it more clear. So we know that Fitch will pick this one, right? Again, because 100 is better than 70. And so if we just leave things the way they are, it will be inefficient. Now, let's see how Abercrombie can encourage Fitch to do the right thing. So first we need to look at those numbers and see that if, as they go from inefficient situation, which in this case is using a filter, which apparently is too expensive for what it does, Abercrombie will gain $50, right? Plus 50. We know that Fitch is going to lose because he will be going from 100 to 70, so he will lose 30. Still, there is some room to compensate Fitch in this situation. We actually can also notice that as we're going from inefficient to an efficient, more efficient situation, the overall gain is again $20, right? And again, how can Abercrombie make sure that the right thing is being done? Well, he needs to consider paying Fitch off, right? And he has enough money to do that. So as in the previous case, we saw that Fitch pretty much offered $40. Now Abercrombie can actually offer $40 on his side. So if he takes 50 bucks, I mean, it's 40 bucks out of this 50 gain and offer it to, so what we do, we just take $40, take it away from Abercrombie, or actually not us, but he is willing to do that. So if he takes 40 bucks from his gain, gives us to Fitch, what happens? First, let's look at Abercrombie. 150 minus 40 is 110. So still better than 100. He still has incentive to do that. He's not going from 100 to 150, but he's at least going from 100 to 110. Still makes sense. Now, what Fitch would think about it? Well, he's still gonna make 70 if Abercrombie is not using filter. But because now Abercrombie is giving him $40 as a compensation for allowing him to go without filter, Fitch is going to end up having 70, right, plus 40, which also gives us 110. All right, and this is how both of them are getting happier. And overall, this outcome provides a more efficient solution because now they pretty much get to 220 in benefit between two of them, which is more than only having 200, which would have been an outcome if they were not able to engage into communication and negotiation. So these are two examples that illustrate how people can ensure efficient outcome in case of externalities if they are able to communicate and negotiate and come up with a mutually beneficial solution that also happens to be efficient.